Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another episode of Countermeasures Game Changer. Now, today I would firstly like to say Happy New Year 2022. We made it through 2021, which was horrendous, and hopefully 2022 will be better for all of you viewers and listeners out there. And yeah, I'm just going to carry on doing my thing, so thanks for coming back and checking out the review. And I've got some other things going up, some other design videos going up, etc. So yeah, just keep watching out for those and do the likes and all that sort of stuff. It all helps grow the channel, which is which is coming along slowly, but I'm happy with it. I don't get to do that as much as I would like to on it, but when I do, I get some nice feedback, so that's very good. So thanks very much for supporting me last year and hopefully into this year. Now, I better crack on by saying that I have been playing a lot of Halo Infinite. So the footage you're seeing here is all my gameplay. What is Halo Infinite? Well, Halo Infinite is a first-person shooter game. It is developed by 343 Industries and published by Xbox Game Studios. It is the 6th game in the Halo series, and according to my notes here, it is the 3rd game in the Reclaimer saga. So I don't really know what that means, but I'll get into that in a sec. Now, this game has been, it was delayed for a year. It was meant to come out when the Xbox Series X came out, and I did buy my Series X over a year ago with the kind of idea that this would probably be the game that I predominantly play on it, because I usually play a lot on PlayStation or on PC. I very rarely get to play a lot on the Xbox, so I thought, right, this will be my game. It'll be this and Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was a mess, so I actually ended up playing that on PC, and this didn't come out. So for the last year, my Xbox has been like the most expensive doorstop that you could possibly own. But slowly but surely, with Game Pass, which is still an excellent deal, there have been a lot of games that I've been experimenting and playing with that I wouldn't normally play. But there hasn't been any killer app, which I would say until now, because I do think that Halo Infinite is an absolute corker. I've been having a really good time with it. I'll give you a quick breakdown of what it is. The campaign follows a human super soldier called Master Chief. Like I said, this is his, he's been in a lot of Halo games of the main franchise and then also various spin-offs. He is fighting against his enemy that are called the Banished in this one on a forerunner ring world called Zeta Halo, or Zeta Halo, however you want to say it. There is there's a lot to talk about in this game. So firstly, I just want to say that this has been long awaited sort of sequel to Halo 5. So the first Halo came out, which was Halo Combat Evolved, which was incredibly popular. Then Halo 2 and Halo 3 came out, and those games as a trilogy were amazing. Halo 4 came out, and while the kind of gameplay was better, and they'd obviously polished a lot of things for kind of new gen consoles at the time, it wasn't as good as the previous 3 games. I think it was a little bit disappointing. Halo 5 came out, and that was just a total bomb. I mean, they sold millions of them, of course they did, but I just didn't really think it was very successful. I think critically it got panned for not being very engaging, and for a lot of the game you weren't playing as the main protagonist, as the Master Chief, which is what people essentially want to do, just play as this super soldier. You were playing mainly as this chap called Locke who was chasing him down. So it just didn't really feel like a Halo game. They went a bit too Call of Duty with it, and I think it kind of failed on that. So luckily, with Halo Infinite, they've gone back to what they know to be a tried and tested formula, which ultimately, a huge part of this game is corridor shooting, which I absolutely love. Now, I've just come off the back of playing Far Cry 5 and Far Cry 6 back to back. So I've done a lot of time in open world first-person shooters, and I was quite looking forward to just having a very simple, straightforward narrative campaign that took me through, a lot of kind of close combat scenarios where I would then also be faced with various bosses, but there would be a kind of story developing that would push me along. That was a mistake on my part, because this game is not that. This game does have elements of that, which, like I said, the 343 Industries have gone back and looked at and obviously dialed a lot of that into this game because it's such a fan favourite to kind of have that style of gameplay. But it's also embraced the open world side to gaming in this this franchise in a whole new way. So as you can see here, maps just popped up conveniently while I'm talking. You now have a whole load of other sub objectives that you can kind of pursue in this game. So ultimately, you're on a new Halo ring, and I'll mention a bit about the lore in a sec. But the Halo ring is basically this massive weapon, and on that ring you have a whole load of bad guys that you have to go through and take out. Now traditionally that would be sort of fairly corridor based, and when I say corridor I don't just mean internally, I mean that you're funneled from one mission to the next without much to do in between. Whereas with this game it's much more open world, which is that you do have your main key objectives, but you also have all this other stuff on the side. Now, having played Far Cry and that recently, I got slightly overwhelmed with the amount of stuff to do in those games, and I think it's slightly over the top and egregious, and I don't necessarily think that that's needed in those games. It's used as padding to kind of justify the value of them, and I think the value is justified at kind of 15 to 20 hours. I don't need everything to be 60 hours. But this game does it quite well, in as much as the objectives that you do, you're instantly rewarded with either freeing Marines that can help you, or you instantly get kind of new armor upgrades, or you pick up these Spartan cores that allow you to upgrade your character to kind of do different things, in terms of melee combat and melee combat, however you want to say it. And yeah, I think it works really well, actually. I think compared to previous games, I like the idea that actually I can go through and do all these side quests, and I'm instantly getting rewarded with stuff. There's not too many that you can't clear an area nicely. There's a few kind of bandit camps that you have to take out that are much sort of larger areas that are very much like Far Cry, like I said, but they're just so much more fun. The gameplay is very fluid. Obviously, the way that this plays, the weapons that you use, they're all they honour the franchise in a way that fans love. So there's all the traditional guns like the Needler, and you've got your kind of usual sort of Marines machine gun and side pistol and that kind of stuff. So all of that, everything is serviced incredibly well. The graphics in this game are outstanding. I would say it's one of the best games on current consoles for sure, and I just think that overall, as a package, this game is the real deal. Now, the campaign's really good. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, so complete, only because I've been taking my time with it over Christmas and been having a really, really good time. I didn't want to rush it just to get to the end so that I could review it. I think I've got enough information about this game to kind of talk about it and say what I do and don't like about it. Now, just to kind of skip back a little bit, the original plot of the Halo franchise is that there is, and I do have it written down here, there is a military science fiction media franchise which was created by Bungie. The franchise is currently managed and developed by 343 Industries, as I mentioned. This original trilogy focuses on the interstellar war between humanity and an alliance of aliens known as the Covenant. The Covenant, led by their religious leaders called the Prophets, worship an ancient civilization known as Forerunners, who perish while defeating the parasitic flood. So there's a mouthful for you. The Halo Array are a group of immense, habitable, ring-shaped superweapons that were created by the Forerunners to destroy the flood. But the Covenant mistake this for a religious artifact, and they think that if they activate it, they're going on a great journey to meet the Forerunners. Now, I actually only sourced that little bit of information about the plot yesterday, and that's the first time this franchise has ever made any sense to me. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to enjoy the game to know all that. You can dive into the lore, of which there's a lot. I don't really care about any of that stuff. I'm not invested in any of that in any way. I know that I'm a super soldier. I'm going around helping people. I'm trying to stop a super weapon. Everything else is fluff. So all of the other stuff that goes around that, whatever. I mean, you can get involved in that on a really deep level, and you can read all the books, and there's like live action TV series, and there's all the spin-off games like Halo Wars and Spartan Assault and all those kind of stuff, those kind of things. Or you can just do what I do, which is just play the first-person shooter versions of Halo, the kind of the core of what these games are about, and you can enjoy them on that level as well. And I do. I always think, oh, there's a Halo game coming up, that'll be fun. I'm probably not going to play it for too long, and then when I get into into it, suddenly I realized that like the days are just spinning past me as I'm enjoying myself. So there is a bit of that, which is that I don't consider myself to be a Halo fan, but I have played a lot of the games. I've played all of them from start to finish, except for the finishing off this one. And I think I probably am a Halo fan. I think anybody that's had an Xbox in the past would be a Halo fan, and quite rightly so. So I have to mention that this game doesn't just have the campaign in it. It does have a whole load of other bits and pieces that are tacked onto it. And one of the things that this has done really well, and it did release before the campaign came out, is it released the multiplayer side of things, which we're looking at now. And again, I have dipped into the multiplayer in the past. I've always lent more towards the kind of Call of Duty sort of more realistic style of multiplayer games, but as time's gone on, those have become less and less realistic and more kind of super soldier. So if you go back to what actually makes a kind of a decent sci-fi online shooter, then this is it. I mean, it's got all the kind of capture the flag and the zone areas and what do you call it, like team deathmatch and all that kind of stuff. It ticks all the boxes and was one of the originals to ever do it. So it does it really well. It keeps a lot of the elements of the original game that the campaign that you played prior to this in place, so that all the controls are familiar. There's nothing too crazy, and I think it's really, really good. They handed that out for free. It obviously came as part of the package for the whole thing, but it's still free if you haven't bought this or you don't have Game Pass, which this is on Game Pass, which again is another conversation about how amazing that is, to have a game of this caliber, which is basically just tagged into Game Pass when they didn't have to do that, I think is a really, really good thing. They've got a lot of goodwill and support because of that. They've introduced this to a whole new world of players. I know kids that are kind of 12 that are playing it, and I also know grown adults of 44, 5 they were also playing it and enjoying it. So it's one of those franchises that stretches across a huge span of ages, and I think it does very successfully. So yeah, like I said, I've just going to refer to my notes again here, but the open world side to this is something that I did really, really enjoy. It not being quite so corridor is something that initially put me off, but actually I've got really into it. It has all the kind of nods to the original games. Like I said, the movement is really, really good. The guns are fun. I mean, something that I always disliked about the original trilogy is that the gun I always liked is like the machine guns and the snipers, but for the marine weapons. But when you were playing the original ones, it tended to be that would you'd lose those weapons quite early on in the game. Excuse me. You'd lose them quite early on in the game, and then you'd be stuck with like all of the alien weapons, which you sort of need to play with, which again is something that I sort of kind of dislike, but you just kind of put up with. Now they've solved that in a different way by having respawn areas for your weapons where you can get new weapons, or you can get new re-up your ammo, which is always good. So yeah, that's good. So that makes the guns a lot of fun because I'm running around with the guns I want. There are also other things in this game that I didn't really expect that I would like, but I do. So on the campaign side of things, I never really cared about the lore. Like I said before, I'm not really mad about the story. It's very basic. But because they do have all of these Marines that are kind of locked up by the enemies, by the banished, going and saving those became an absolute priority for me. As soon as you kind of cleared an FOB base, and it shows all the things around that need attention, like you can pick up different armor elements, etc. One of the things was that there were people that were captured, so going and kind of freeing those guys is incredibly satisfying for me. And whenever I play any games like this, that's something I really like to do. Like in Far Cry, if I drive by someone, they're captured at the side of the road, I have to stop and help them. It's just something that's like, I don't know, kind of ingrained in me. But then the next minute I'll be like shooting a dog. So it's not all it's not all kind of rainbows and fluffy clouds. There is a sort of a darker side to me for sure. So yeah, I do think this game is well worth checking out. The music is amazing. Obviously there is a downside to the multiplayer, which is that it does have an element of microtransactions. That's something which unfortunately is a huge part of all of these games. And I am a designer in my full-time job and things that I do, an illustrator in my real life when I'm not doing this. And something that I've been getting involved with and seeing a lot more of are NFTs. And NFTs are something that non-fungible tokens, as they're fully known as. That is something from an artistic point of view that I've been coming up against a lot in my line of work. But also I'm starting to see more and more interest in NFTs in the gaming workspace. And that's something that I'm quite curious about how that's going to develop, and what the kind of inclusion of those NFTs in brands like this could potentially have an impact on the audience for people not being so inclusive anymore. Anyway, that's a future conversation, but that's just something that these games that do have microtransactions in them definitely open up the door for introducing NFTs in the future, and game passes and all this kind of stuff, or season passes I should say. So yeah, that's a future conversation, but this certainly has a little sprinkle of that, and I can see maybe Halo 7, whatever that's called, when that comes out, I suspect that there may be a lot more of that kind of microtransaction element in there. Now, at the moment, you can play through the entire game. You can play through the entire multiplayer game side to this game without actually buying anything if you don't want to. But there is also a slight fear of missing out when you're constantly bombarded with new kind of styles of armor and new helmets and all this kind of stuff that other players would have and you don't necessarily have. So there is a fear of missing out, and I think there's also the term of people being a default, which is becoming an increasing kind of word that's being used to insult other people that play games online and also just play games in general, which is that you're too poor to afford the kind of the better armor, or you're too poor to afford that kind of gun or the skin for that weapon or that helmet or those boots or whatever it's called being a default. And it's something which I have a huge problem with, playground slurs and all that kind of stuff. But this game does allow you to go through and enjoy the entire game without having to get involved in any of that. But there is definite pressure to get involved with that and to buy the season pass. And I think for that reason, I have to mark this game down slightly because of that. It is engaging in that. There are games coming out now that aren't engaging in that at all. But this, unfortunately, does have this as an element, which is something that does put me off slightly. So overall, love the campaign and I loved all the experience of the multiplayer. I think it's a must game for anyone. There's some real quality here, excellent graphics, well designed. The voice acting is really, really good. Just the overall branding of the whole thing is just brilliant, playing on what's gone before, but also bringing it a fresh update. I think it is an absolute must play. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this. I am going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. It would have been a 9, but again, microtransactions and that kind of creepy suspicion that season passes and the sprinkle of NFTs in the air kind of wards me off it slightly from giving it a 9, but I think it's a strong 8 for sure, and I definitely recommend that you check it out. I'm going to give it Daddy JJ's badass seal of approval, of course, and yeah, if you get time, check it out. If you've got Game Pass, there is absolutely no reason not to download this and try it. So I hope you do that and check it out, and I've had a lot of fun with it and I hope you do too. So yeah, that's about it. So without furthermore, I just would like to say Happy New Year, obviously, again, 2022. And be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.